Hey, welcome back to Impella Man's Garage, everyone. Your home for the most popular, least watched automotive enthusiast channel on YouTube. In this latest video in our series on finding resonant vibrations in our old Coupe DeVille, we're going to install a new heavy-duty, race-ready flex plate and reinstall our transmission, and along the way, we might even learn something. So stick around. We're going to dive into the action already in progress. All right, hopefully we have juice for the battery. Turn that off. This is a test to just check for the wobble in the flywheel and make sure we don't have any weird noises. So here we go. All right, so I heard a little bit of weirdness. The battery's a little low. I'm going to check the recording real quick. All right, we're going to check the engagement of the new starter with the Hayes flex plate right now, so let's do that next. Battery's a little weak, probably need to put my battery tender on there. Here we go. Yeah, I hear a little weirdness there. I'm gonna have to go look at that footage and see what's going on. All right, so we got this starter to where I can get this pinion out now. Just got it basically freed up. Let me get my other hand in there. All right, so I had to get my other hand in there to turn the gear so I could get it out and while applying pressure here. So I have a Allen wrench, which is 50 thousandths, and it easily goes down between the bottom of the flex plate tooth and the trough of the pinion gear on the starter. I'm going to take out one of those shims, which I believe is 1/32, and we're going to see if we can tighten up that gap. I heard a little bit of a little whine. I'm not sure if that was the sound of a starter motor not properly engaging, or maybe it's just a new starter, or maybe it's just a new flex plate, because when you tap on that thing, it really rings. Dong! You know. Of course, I am cranking it without the torque converter installed, so it probably will make a little, resonating noise, I suppose. So let me show you what I mean. Probably some of that is what I heard when the engine was starting. So I am going to take out one of these shims and see what happens. All right, I took out a 1/16. Basically, I took out two 1/32 shims. I don't know what the total stack is, but it doesn't really matter. It's different for every car. That's the stack right there. I think there's a 1/16. I think there might be a 64th in there, and then maybe another 32nd. I'm not sure. Anyway, it's about that tall. But it's different for every car. Anyway, so I was able to get my 50 thousandths Allen head wrench in between the bottom of the flex plate tooth and the trough of the pinion gear on the starter, and it looks pretty good. And the 1/8 drill bit test between the shaft and the flex plate gears was much closer, so it slipped in there really nicely, but had very little room to move around. So I think I'm going to leave it right here. Let's lower the car and do another crank test and see what it sounds like. All right, I believe we have shimmed our starter appropriately for this particular setup. We got the 1/8 inch drill bit between the shaft and the teeth on the flex plate that fits in there really nicely with no room for movement, but it slides in and out. I think I'm going to call that good. I've got a 50 thousandths, say that real fast, Allen wrench between the bottom tooth and the trough on the pinion gear on the starter. And it fit in there. It just fit in there. I mean, just. So I think folks say around 35 thousandths, but I'm going to go with, 50. Okay, I'm going to go with that. It seems to crank fine, other than my battery needs a little charge. This thing, it rings a little bit when it spins, though, because of that, right? There's no torque converter connected to this thing. So I would imagine because it would ring a little bit with the vibration. So I'm not going to stress too much about that. So I think at this point, I think we're about ready to start putting this whole car back together. Now on the video from this angle, you probably saw, I looked at the video as well in the editing process, and you could see this extremely slight variation here laterally like this, right? Now, how much of that is video anomalies? How much of it is variability between each of these teeth? How much of it is the flex plate? How much of it is the engine? I couldn't tell you. There's a lot of variables in there. They do call it a flex plate, however, for a reason, so keep that in mind. It is supposed to move around a little bit, but not much. One of my viewers said on a flywheel on a manual transmission, the tolerance is extremely small, like what, 4 or 5 thousandths, something like that of, run out. On a flex plate, I would expect it to be higher, but I don't know what it's supposed to be. I can tell you this, and looking at that video, this one doesn't move nearly as badly as the original flex plate. However, let's say, for instance, this does not fix our problem. Okay, fine. We're going to keep right on working, keep right on making videos in this series until it's fixed. So I'm all in right now, folks. I'm all in. Okay. So besides, you know what? I'm kind of glad I dug into this flex plate anyway, because taking a look at these holes here where some yahoo got on this with a ooga dooga and just basically ruined it. I mean, this flex plate is basically ruined, in my opinion. This is why ARP wants you to put grease underneath the bolts, so you can torque the flex plate to the engine properly without gouging the metal. This has to have caused some sort of an issue, although I'm unable to quantify how much. Starter seems to work good. You may have seen in that video what appeared to be the pinion gear stayed out after I stopped cranking the engine. Initially, when I tried to get into that hole with a screwdriver and pry that pinion gear outward, it just wouldn't go. I thought, well, maybe the hole's too small, maybe my screwdriver's too big. No, I think it's just crap from China, to be honest with you. But now it moves freely. I think it just needed a little bit of action, and probably been sitting on a shelf for 5 years. I don't know. So after seeing a little bit of action, it moves back and forth really nicely. And so I'm going to run with it. And I think I'm going to have the other one rebuilt and use as a spare in case this piece of junk craps out on me. So one thing, at least they aren't pretty together. So there's that. All right, let's move on and start putting this car back together. Well, all right, that was about the easiest thing I ever did, and it wasn't even precarious. Let's move on and get our Turbo 400 reinstalled in our Coupe DeVille. All right, let's lower the car down to a reasonable level. Crunch! I think we'll raise it up a little more, put it on the safety catch, and then use the transmission jack the rest of the way. I just don't want to have to jack that transmission way up in the air with that jack. It gets a little ungainly. All right, now the safety catches are on. All right, now we're at a safe level. Now we'll use the transmission jack to do the rest of the work. Get a little close to the old flex plate there. Let's do some minor adjustments. And we're about the right height. Got to do a little bit of a alignment here. And we'll need to remove our torque converter bracket. I guess we ought to do that now. It's not going to fall off tilted the way it is. Yeah, I know you can't see anything up in here, but that's all right. go. All right, I got my jack in here with a piece of wood, lifted the back of the engine up a little bit. It's sagging a little too much because, you know, it's just being held up by the engine mounts. And right now I'm going to raise the transmission a smidgen. And then I'm going to adjust the angle of the dangle. And I keep hitting my head on pretty much everything underneath the car because, let me tell you something, having a lift is fantastic until you bang your head on something, and then it sucks. I actually have a yellow hard hat in the cabinet that I wore when I was doing this same job on my Jeep, because the Jeep has a lot of perilous pieces of metal hanging down. And because I'm so scatterbrained, I forget where I am and bang my head on pretty much everything. Alrighty, now let's move our transmission a little closer to the party. Hit head again, because I forget where I am from one moment to the next. Want to look at the center of the torque converter and how it's lining up with the flex plate. That's the most important thing, really. And of course the dowel pins on either side. I think I need to go up a little more. And we've got to adjust the angle of the dangle of the transmission because the platform is not quite right. Most definitely. So let's take this side down. Yeah, clearly I have screwed that up. Come on back down. A little bit, a little bit. Hit my head again. Move it back some. Move it back, stand back, way back. Alrighty. Okay, this is going to take 14 years, so I'll be back in a few minutes. Alright, I got my first two bolts started up top. Using the bolts to ease our way towards the engine. Hard to see over here. We're all the way up over here. Sure enough, it's the driver's side that's the one that's lagging behind. Man, this exhaust system is not cool. Well, it is cool, but actually it's hot when the engine's running. Will you shut up? Where's the hole? There it is. All right. Where's my extension? Bar it is. Got to extend my capabilities momentarily to facilitate the installation of this here bolt. Got one more. I'm not torquing, I'm just snugging. Might have to take the whole thing apart again, you never can tell. Knowing my luck. And you folks know how that goes. We don't need that much extending. In case you're wondering, today is Friday, October the 21st. Most of my video work is done in real time. Typically, I don't save up video and upload it, 6 months later. When you see me upload a video, I've usually finished the work a day prior or 2 days prior and just finished editing. So the editing process for me is, I've got it trimmed down pretty good. To be honest, So anyway, so I think right now, I think the next step is to lift this whole affair on up a little bit and get the transmission mount in place. So the car is lower than it was last time when I pulled the transmission out, mostly because I didn't like the perilousness of the the way the jack was earlier. So oh, hit my head again. There we go. Man, we got a coat of primer. Yeah, that's what I thought. See, that was, we can't do that. That's stupid. We got a coat of primer. We got a coat of paint. We got a coat of rubberized undercoating. We got another coat of paint on this transmission mount. And I'd say it's pretty well protected. Minus that rust I just got on it, but you know, anyway. You can do it. Let's see, we're gonna have to raise her up a little more. Yeah, probably so. Just let that dangle right there. Hit my head again. I'm gonna quit. I'm gonna give me epilepsy. Damn. All right, so I'm backing up the transmission jack with the with old blue Walker over here too underneath the motor. So we don't want any misfortunes, you know. That would not be cool. A little more. There you go. I just don't like taxing those engine mounts up front, you know, unnecessarily. So, all right, we got enough room to dangle our dangle now. Don't you be dangling your dangle around me. I don't want nothing to do with that. We have inserted a bolt into the transmission mount, people. I would not kid around about a thing like that. Now we got to do this one. Look at that. We got two. I'm getting good at this. This emergency cable is going to poke me in the eye here in a minute. Emergency cable. Americans, oh, it's the emergency brake. No, it's not. Try stopping your car with that in an emergency. It won't happen. Oh, that's pretty silly. Emergency brake. Now this one is the hard one. Let's see, because there's a rubber mount here that is, you know, it's not good. All right, so this flex plate has a couple of options for dropping bolt, and that was one, so we'll have to use the other. You know, it's really kind of amazing. There's only 3 bolts that connect the flex plate to the torque converter. You would think if I was to design it, there'd be like 25. You know, it'd be ridiculous. You know, it'd be overkill, crazy. Anyway, so you can't turn that. You have to turn the engine. However, we can position this so that we can ensure that we have the right holes. And there's holes on the outer. There's ones that's farther inward. We don't use those. We use the ones that are outer. And I guess that depends on the type of torque converter that you use. Clearly, the outer ones are the ones we use. Let's pick one and go with it. Going with the original bolts that came with the, you know what? I'm guessing these probably would be a good candidate for that. I don't even have my microphone attached. Probably get all kinds of weird noises. So I'm guessing this is going to be a good candidate for the that little blue Loctite stuff. Let me go get some of that. I'll be right back. Yeah, there's 3 bolts, man, to hold the flex plate to the torque converter. Of course, well, anyway, but the center is, you know, in the middle of the crankshaft, but it doesn't touch. So I guess it's just, I don't know, it's just amazing. Yet there's 3 bolts, right? To transfer the energy from the engine to the drivetrain. Now, when we put these bolts in here, what it'll do is, of course, I'm sure as you guys know, I don't have to tell you. God, this stuff stinks. It smells like a toilet. I'm not lying. It smells like a toilet, like in a public restaurant or something. It's not good. It's not a poopy smell. It's just kind of that. It smells like those blue things in the urinal, you know? It's weird. All right, consequently, these are 30 foot-pounds. And I'm gonna just snug one up and give myself enough tightness to move this thing around, and I'll do the other two. I know what this smells like now. You know how when you take the top off the lid on the tank on your toilet, you know where all the float mechanism is and all that kind of stuff, you know, and you go, you know, I gotta fix my toilet or do whatever. You take the top off and you got that plastic float and all that stuff and that rubber, and it's been just, you know, it's just been oozing around in that water for 10 years because you haven't repaired your toilet in that long, you know. And then you pull it off, and that smell of that plastic and that rubber and that water, that's what this smells like. That's what the Loctite thread locker stick smells like. I wouldn't kid about a thing like that. Start them all before tightening any. That came from a reputable YouTuber named Jeff Bradshaw. All right, that's 30 pound-feet. All right, let's move her around. Service manual says to do it like this. So that's what I'm doing. Last one, whoops. Move it a little more. Let's see. 30. There we go. Okay. The transmission is fully bolted to the engine, the flex plate, and to the frame. That's a huge step. All right, let's move on. Up next, I'm going to change the rear seal. And then after that, I'm going to do a transmission service. It's a messy business, this, sometimes. I'm committed now. Last time I did this, it took a while. It's in there, boys. Some yahoo put some sealant in here last time I did this. I wonder who that was. I'm gonna have to work on this for a little while, and we'll see how successful we are here just shortly. We just need a little gentle persuasion, I think. Take a little bit of the tension off of that seal there. Yeah, we're starting to come on out. There we go. All right, let me clean that up a little bit, get that sealant off of there, and then we'll put our new seal in. All right, I'm just going to put a little sealant around the edge here. I know this is not supposed to be necessary, but it'd make me feel better. Well, that's not the right kind of sealant. Well, you know, you just go tell me all about it in the comments down below. It'll be okay. Just a little smear. We'll use our hand, how about that? Or we could use some high-tech stuff here. Namely, a piece of wood with a hole in it. Make sure we're square for the first tap. All right, get the man up. Move our fingers out of the way. Ha! First try. Actually, that's the second try. I edited out the first one, so you'll get over it. That seal is installed. Hole saw, 1x4 pine wood. Fantastic seal installation tool. Let's move on. All right, we're going to go ahead and do a quick service on the transmission. Mostly because I don't like this rusted pan, to be honest with you. I've been staring at it now for a couple of weeks, and I'm like, that's got to go. So we're gonna fix that. And we'll, we'll put a new filter and change the fluid. It's not like we haven't changed the fluid already. Most of it's gone, it leaked out of the tailpiece. So, all right, quit talking. More work. Which bolt shall I pick on first? Maybe this one. All right, we're gonna do this without spilling a drop. That's some pretty new fluid. Actually, of course the transmission was rebuilt, oh, I don't know, 4 years ago, 5, something like that. Not too long after I got the car. That's pretty. But, you might as well do it while we're doing all this other stuff. That way we can be rest assured that, everything is good to go. All right, we're going to, whoa-oh. Look at that, I spilled a drop. Man alive, I said I wasn't gonna do that. All right, let me position our little situation into a predicament where we don't make a whole lot of mess. Up next, we're gonna get this filter off of here. Now, you may recall, I made a video, a really short one, several years ago, about replacing this kickdown switch. And that thing's got like 25,000 views. Of course, now that's a lot for me, so anyway. Go check that out. There's not a whole lot to it. But folks were curious because the kickdown switch inside here is completely different from what you normally see. The original one, I have it in the cabinet over here. I didn't get rid of it, but they're completely different. See, let's take that gasket off of there. In reality, this could probably be reused with no issues whatsoever. All right, so we got a little bit of clutch material here, but it's not, I think this is normal. This is not excessive to me. What do you guys think? Is that excessive? It's not unlike what I have, what I've seen when I, replace transmission filter in the past on other cars. All right, let me go ahead and get this cleaned up and we'll get the new filter in and then we'll button this up. All right, so a little information about this Turbo 400 filter change. First off, you have this weird little nut. Don't lose that, it's a special nut. Or, I'm sorry, bolt, rather. And it's got a spacer on it, so you want to reuse that. There's a tube that fits up inside the body of the transmission, and you get these two little standoffs here to keep it orientated correctly. Up inside the hole where this thing goes is an O-ring. And when you do the filter job, you're going to want to change that O-ring out, although ours is, clearly brand new. But it's going to get swapped out anyway. And this little pipe is labeled case and filter, so you can't screw it up, right? So you just put your O-ring back on that. Usually they stay up inside there, so I had to go get myself a flashlight so I could see what in the tarnation I was doing. There we go. I believe that got it. All right, so we'll put a little transmission fluid on that rubber part. Let's put the bolt on first. Let's just do that first. That way we're not struggling to hold this thing. There we go. That's a firm, it's a firm fit. All right, I've been trying to limit the amount of time at the mobile paint booth, but hey, you know what? Some things have just got to be done. So that's a sanding disc and a wire wheel and a cleanup with some brake clean and so on and so forth. Turbo Hydromatic division of GMC. All right, so let's go ahead and proceed with the good old Eastwood metal prep. Do some rust conversion, coating on that sheet metal. on the bare metal. You want to stand back from this stuff. You don't want to breathe this mess. I'm going to keep that wet for about 20 minutes. And then after that, we'll wash it off with water. And then it should have a nice gray haze to it afterwards. And then I'll prime it with some engine primer. And I think I'll shoot it with Cadillac Blue. All right, we're going to keep it simple and do a little plywood painting here. That's after the metal prep has had a little bit of time to help us out. So let's go ahead and get a primer coat on. And then we'll get a coat of Cadillac Blue on this old transmission pan. All right, there you have it. A brand new Turbo 400 transmission cover for our 71 Coupe DeVille. And that turned out pretty good, really. It was pretty rusty. I didn't really understand how rusty it was until I started working on it, but at least we've counteracted the rust for maybe another 50 years. So, all right, this Bill Hirsch paint is pretty good stuff, but it's going to need probably about 18 hours to dry. So right now, we're at a standstill. So we'll pick back up tomorrow. All right, I'm going to skip through a couple of these items here because they're pretty quick. I just reinstalled the transmission oil dipstick tube. Keep in mind that you need to put an appropriate sized O-ring on the tube before you insert it into the transmission. There's a little indentation for that O-ring. And the dipstick tube bolts to the transmission using one of the transmission to engine bolts up there at the top. So that is good to go now. Up next, I'm going to go ahead and reattach these transmission oil cooler lines. I've got our compression fittings back on for the oil cooler lines for the transmission. You want to use your flare nut wrenches when you do that, folks, to keep from tearing things up. Also, don't go crazy on it and gorilla over tighten it. That's not necessary. It just needs to be just tight enough to not leak. All right, up next, I think I'm going to reattach the vacuum line for the modulator valve, which is right there. All right, do yourself a favor, make your life a little bit easier, and just have a really slight smear of Permatex Ultra Gray or some other gasket maker onto the transmission pan flange, merely to hold the gasket in place while you put it up on the transmission. Otherwise, you know, these transmission oil pan gaskets are just, it's like working with a slinky, really. So I'm going to see if I can't get this one to stick down onto the pan first, and then I'll put it on the car. Well, let me tell you what, man. I am digging that. That really turned out nicely. I think that looks fantastic on that transmission. My kick down wiring here is a little worse for wear. The insulation, I guess it's old cloth tile style stuff, is pretty much rotten. So I clipped it off back to there, and I'm going to go get some of that plastic accordion stuff and cover up the wire with that before we reattach it. So I'm going to go get that now. But that looks pretty cool, actually. So that ought to look good once I get the blue inspection cover back on it. And the transmission may not work, but at least it'll be pretty. Anyway, let me go get something and fix this up. All right, we're getting there. We got the kick down wire reconnected. Got some modern looking stuff on there. Got the original clip back on there. That's important. Keep your original clips intact to keep your wiring setup managed properly. Just kind of got it shoved up in the original cloth stuff. I think that'll be okay. And the speedometer cable screwed back in. And I'm going to do the linkage next. It's looking pretty nice. All right, we got the shift linkage reattached. I don't recall there being a washer here. I think they just had the nut straight under this. It was a little ganked up, so I had to re-tap this nut and the threads on the end of that shaft. Got this other stuff installed. Got the shift linkage on, and slips into this bushing in the rail, and got this back in the same location. And I lowered the car and tested all the linkages, and everything seems to shift okay. So up next, I think we're going to put the inspection cover on and then the starter. All right, we got our starter in and our inspection cover and all that kind of stuff. And this is what the passenger side setup looks like. Now the LED light on the camera just really highlights all the rust, but oh well. I've got some modern flexible stuff here. I need to put a tie strap or a zip tie right there on that hook to make sure that stays nice and tidy. Clean up that little piece of tape right there. I need to tidy up a little bit. Key thing is just keeping these wires away from the exhaust manifold, so I'll have to tie that back a little bit. But we are done in this whole area right here. The last thing I'm going to do is reinstall the drive shaft. Well, Forge gave me some of these old spud wrenches. I bet he did it as a joke, thinking I'd never find a use for them. How about lining up your drive shaft flange with your pinion? There you go. 100-year-old Williams to the rescue. Courtesy of Carport Forge. All right, here we are on our test drive, and initial indications are the following. I'm up to 60, I'm going uphill, and guess who still has a vibration all throughout the car? So let's shower down on the accelerator a little bit here. Oh, that's just awful. I can hear it. I can feel it in my butt, I can feel it in my foot, and I can hear it. Anyway, it's still there. So, what's good about this whole affair? My starter sounds fantastic. It no longer makes a rattly, whiny noise, and it engages properly. We have a new flex plate. The old flex plate needed to be replaced anyway, so I'm glad we did that, actually. But we have more work ahead of us. So our next destination is clearly the rear end. We're gonna go back and take the rear end apart finally. I've been putting it off for years. I had been suspecting the problem was back there all along, but because of the weirdness of this issue, I just was reluctant to start there with the repair. But maybe I'm a fool, but oh well. I like being thorough. The kicker in this whole thing is the problem doesn't even start occurring faintly until you hit about 50, right? And then as you get into highway speed, you can feel it. But if you're going up a slight grade like I am now, and you give it gas, you know, we're just creeping on up to 70, and you let off, you know, it's just still there, you know? It feels like maybe it's diminished somewhat in some regard, but that could just be my imagination. If I give it a lot of gas without a shift down, oh, it's awful. Yeah. All right, we got more work to do. The next video in this series will be tearing into the rear end of this old Coupe DeVille. I appreciate you guys stopping by the channel. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And if you'd like to be notified whenever I release a new video, don't forget to click that little bell down below. You guys have a good one, and remember to enjoy driving your classic Cadillac.